Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swagglehaus. In today's video, I'm going to be playing for you all a recording of the speech I delivered at Shortboxed Live called A Data-Driven Market Report. For clarification purposes, this is not the actual speech I delivered at the con, as I don't actually have the footage of it, but this is a rehearsal of the speech that I recorded when I was practicing at home. And yes, that means that I practice my cheesy canned jokes and candid cadence. There will be some visuals on the screen that I used as slides, but you are totally welcome to treat this more like a podcast. As always, if you could like, comment, subscribe, I would appreciate it. And with that out of the way, I hope you all enjoy my talk. Hello, good afternoon. How you guys doing? Thank you all so much for coming. Now, Shortbox had invited me here today because they thought it would be cool if I gave a speech about the state of the comic book market. Think of it like a TED Talk, Gene said to me. Now, I propose it would be much more interesting to lead an appreciation panel of my favorite character ever, Darkhawk, but they seem to think that a data-driven market report would be a lot more informative to you guys. So here we are. Agreed to disagree, but let's hope that they're right. I wanted to start off by asking you all a question. How many people here have ever bought a comic because they thought it was undervalued? Raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, quite a few of you, right? Now, let me ask this. How did you know that comic was undervalued? What does it mean for a comic book to be undervalued? How do you actually quantify that? Is it a book that has the first appearance of a character soon to be in a movie? Does that mean that that comic book is sure to go to the moon? This is a thumbnail of one of my first YouTube videos, telling you all about 5 comics that I thought were undervalued. Revisiting this video was actually kind of horrifying because I had to listen to myself talk, but aside from that, I actually didn't mind some of my picks. Although there's one pick in there that stands out to me. Can you all guess it? Eternals #3, First Appearance of Cersei. This book is for sure undervalued because Gemma Chan is going to play her in a movie. I mean, nobody cared about Iron Man before Robert Downey Jr., and look at where his books are today. So by that logic, Cersei is going to be the next best thing, the face of comics, the book that is going to take us all to the moon. Was I right? Well, that depends. This is a graph of that book in a CGC 9.8 grade. I made my pick when it was valued at around $361. And I felt pretty good about it too, because if you look at the chart, you can see that it's coming off of a little bit of a dip. Well, sure enough, in just 5 months' time, the book would jump up to $1,265. 4x. I was a genius, right? Well, maybe not. Because shortly thereafter, the book would come back down. Way back down. Way back down. In fact, you can see that the same book sells today for an average of only $283. From the time I made my prediction to where it is today, the book has actually dropped by 20%, and that is on top of inflation going up. So how could this undervalued book have gone down by so much? Why was I so sure to call it undervalued? Had I known what I know now, I might have actually gone so far as to say that the book was actually overvalued. But aside from all that, what responsibility did I have to the people that acted on my advice? I suppose this would be a good time for me to officially introduce myself. My name is Mickey Finnegan, and by day, I live in Los Angeles and work in the entertainment industry as a writer and director. I've had the great fortune to have worked on some amazing projects in my career, collaborated with amazing talent from all different facets of the entertainment industry, and have my work viewed by millions and millions of people all across the world. But during COVID lockdown, I decided to start a YouTube channel called Swagglehaus Comics, where now, under this identity, thousands of people watch me use whiteboards to talk about comic books. In my professional life, the pressure of knowing my work was being viewed by millions of people has never really bothered me. But in my YouTube world, realizing that I could suggest an undervalued book, and a couple hours later notice that 20 copies had sold on eBay, gave me a lot of anxiety. Truly, it did. There were real viewers behind those numbers, and even worse, they actually listened to what I had to say. So I started to wonder, what could I do to be more sure about the information I put out there? How could I make better comic recommendations? Would there be a way for me to more accurately determine what the true values of books are? Could I create systems that would put my biases aside? And could I have made models that would have helped me see the crash of books like Eternals 3 sooner? I went on a mission to understand the comic book market as best as I possibly could, but not from a pop cultural point of view, but this time from a data-driven one. One of the systems I would eventually create is a series that has since been quite popular on my channel, a video series I call the Comic Book Index. Over the last year, I tracked the values of the top 100 most popular comics within each era, silver, bronze, and copper, to understand the state of these markets on a monthly basis. These indexes are made up of the books you would imagine, Silver Age is FF48, Bronze Age, Hulk 181, Copper Age, X-Men 266, things like that. I got tired of hearing people say, this book is undervalued, that book is overvalued, this book is going up, that book is going down. I wanted to know from a 30,000-foot view, what was actually happening in the market? And let me just add, as someone who fancies themselves creative, this took me a long time to create, but it was worth it. Because as soon as I put it together, looking at the values years back, I was instantly able to see clear trends in markets' behaviors. Sure, some individual books went up and some individual books went down, but the key books in this index, in a vacuum, actually returned 18 to 15% year over year on their fair market values. This had to mean something. Where once I would think a movie trailer would be the sole driver of an increased value in a book, it dawned on me that there must be much larger factors at play. What I generally found was that while movies can have effects on demand and some books could be undervalued, the overall comic market seemed to be much more influenced by macroeconomic factors. Comic values go up in direct correlation to interest rate cuts. And conversely, comic values go down in direct correlation to interest rate hikes. Now I realize that correlation does not equal causation, but when I look at this graph and trace it alongside the decisions of the Federal Reserve, it seems correlated AF. Now I won't really belabor all of the lines, charts, and graphs you guys see on your screen in front of you, but I do want to quickly point out the journey of a book like Avengers 57. Now you guys all know this book, first appearance of Vision. And what's interesting to me about this is that if you look at the graph and you look at it alongside the decisions of the Federal Reserve in terms of interest rate hikes and interest rate cuts, the chart effectively moves in correlation to all of the choices. I realize that this is just one example, one book, one grade, but if you spend as much time as I do looking at these charts and putting the index together, you start to see a pattern over and over again. Most of you are probably already familiar with what happened to comic prices during COVID, but in case you missed it, you'll notice that in early 2021, comics doubled, tripled, and in the case of Eternals 3, even quadrupled overnight. There were many reasons for this, of course. People bored at home, movie speculation. But what likely affected the prices most was the money printing on a national scale that found its way into risk assets like comics. It makes sense, right? More money, more buying, more demand, less supply. Do you guys remember what it was like back then? Interest rates were 0%. It was free money time. Our house values were pumping. Our stocks were pumping. Our crypto was pumping. It only made sense to pump our comic book portfolios as well. Let's buy some keys, buy some grails. Black Knight, who's that? Who cares? What are you asking for? 4K? I'll give you 5K. But nothing lasts forever. Of course, there have been ups and downs in various months, but what do you start to see happening at the start of March of 2022? That is the beginning of major corrections in values. And what do you also notice happening in March of 2022? Well, that is the start of the interest rate hikes for the very first time since 2018. And since then, there have been many interest rate hikes continuing to push the index value down. It's easy to see now that a correction was coming, but at the time it wasn't so obvious. Certainly not obvious until I started putting the index together. However, once I did, I felt like I was getting a preview into the future. As I was tracking books month to month, it became increasingly evident that all gains from 2021 were soon going to be erased. To quote Thanos, dread it, run from it, the correction was going to arrive all the same. Didn't matter if you were AF-15, X-Men 1, or Eternals 3, your book was coming back down. And sure enough, in time, they all did. I'd like to add that I chose not to make these graphs just to give comic book investors stock trading tips, but rather I made it to help people navigate an unprecedented 2 years that we saw in the collectibles world. While I'm sure there are many Nostradamuses in the room who sold their entire collection at the height of 2021 because they knew it was overinflated, and finally today here at Shortboxed Live are going to buy them all back for half price. There were a lot of new comic book collectors that got caught up in the hype and found themselves overpaying on a lot of books and now feel discouraged with the hobby. Perhaps if they had more data-driven tools to evaluate their purchases, they could have understood that if books can be undervalued, they most certainly can be overvalued as well. I saw a sign over there that read, "We pay the most for comics." And I thought to myself, man, story of my life. I too pay the most for comics. If you guys watch my YouTube channel, man, I've done a lot of unboxings these last couple of years. But is it all doom and gloom? Are comics now going to zero? If you were someone who bought all these undervalued books at the height of the market, can I offer you a bit of data-driven copium? I think I can. How is the comic market today? More importantly, where is the market going in the future? Truth is, I don't know. Nobody does. I don't have a crystal ball, and apparently I have poor judgment when it comes to Eternal's keys, so don't listen to me. But as I continue to update my index and study lines, charts, and graphs, what I see is that the floor values for comics in most cases are still holding above their 2020 prices, which suggests to me that while books got overinflated during the stimulus, and now that that money is being drained out of the system, the organic demand and natural appreciation of comic values are still in line with the trend. If you go back far enough, you'll see that year after year, decade after decade, the key books continue to slowly go up. On top of that, while there have been a lot of collectors who have churned, COVID brought in a lot of new people to the hobby. There are more people collecting vintage comics today than there were back in 2019 and 2020, and I'm sure there will be even more tomorrow. Just look around the room. We're in the toughest economic time since 2008, in the midst of a WGA writer strike, meaning no superhero movies for a while, and listening to a random YouTuber talk about market crashes. Yet still, here today, people are spending lots of money on expensive paper. Somebody once said to me that comic collectors are resilient. I believe that to be true. Comic collectors are resilient, and they should be. This is a really fun hobby. Bear market, bull market, collectors are going to continue to buy what they love regardless of what happens, and there is no data I can pull to explain that. We love comics, and lucky for us, in a lot of ways, this is one of the greatest times to be involved in it. Never have there been more tools in the hobby for things like pricing and cataloging, more social channels to connect with other collectors, more pop cultural media celebrating our favorite heroes, and more new age companies like Shortboxed taking the hobby out of the Bronze Age and bringing it into a modern medium that the current generation of collectors can actually appreciate. I'm not just blowing smoke. I love what they are doing, and I certainly hope they continue to expand upon their data-driven material so that I can spend less time looking at lines, charts, and graphs and more time looking at splash pages. Seriously, somebody take over this index for me. Gene, seriously. So do I think that we're out of the woods yet? No, I don't think so. But we're getting there. Of course, there might still be more pain to come in the global economy. Interest rates are still high, and they could go up even higher. We probably won't see record prices too soon, but I do think that some comic values are going to be able to hold their floor. Now, not all comics. Some comics may continue to go down, and some comics may never reach their former highs. But there will be a time in the future when the market turns the corner. Papa Jerome Powell starts to cut interest rates and flips the money printer switch back on, and comics go back to the moon. Maybe we'll all find ourselves at Shortboxed Live 10, looking at all those beautiful comics on the wall, seeing the prices have quadrupled overnight, and thinking to ourselves, man, I should have bought that book back in 2023. It was so undervalued. Thank you.